Okay. Okay. Good morning. Good morning. Wait a couple seconds for people to connect to our audio. And then, good morning, everyone. Okay. All right. So good morning, everyone, and welcome to this Workforce Wednesday webinar. My name is Jalissa Jones with the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. I will be the moderator and technical support for today's webinar. And today's topic is why you can't ignore your emotions in the AI era. And as a reminder, all participants in the webinar do not have the ability to unmute yourselves. If you have questions as the webinar proceeds, please post them in the chat box or the Q&A, and we will address them throughout and at the end of the webinar when we pause for Q&A. And also as a reminder, this webinar will be recorded. The presentation, recording, and any materials presented during today's meeting will be available on the Illinois Workforce Academy website within 48 hours of today's session. And I will put the link to the presentation for today in the chat momentarily. To be as accessible as possible, this webinar will be offering closed captions and live transcriptions. So please feel free to turn this on using your Zoom toolbar. Tomorrow, each attendee will receive a follow-up email, which will include a survey asking you about today's webinar. So if you could please provide feedback and any suggestions that you have to help improve this upcoming professional development efforts. I now have a set of polls. If you could please take a moment to respond to them. Second. So it's just 2 questions. If you could. Yeah. Yeah, good take. Okay. We have got, yeah. Okay, cool. And poll. So yeah, looking like we've got mostly people from Title I, kind of a mix of Chicago and Northern Illinois. And this poll, and just so you can see our results, as you can see, mostly Title I, a couple from other WIOA state partners and shareholders, and then from mostly, kind of evenly spread out today, Chicago, Southern Illinois, Northern Illinois. So great. Okay, thank you so much for that. Now, without further ado, I will hand it over to your host today, Hiba Tanvir.
Thank you very much, Jalissa, for welcoming me on. I am going to turn to my presentation and get started. Okay, you can see my screen?
Yes, we can
Oh.
see the full thing. There we go.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me and giving me the opportunity to host what it is that I'm so passionate about. My name is Hiba Tanvir, and I'll be telling you a little bit more about myself. But before that, today we're here to talk about why you cannot ignore your emotions in the AI era and why and how emotional intelligence can become your competitive edge. So, I'm an EQ strategist, which is basically a fun and fancy way of saying that I love thinking, talking, writing, training, and really coaching people on how to use their emotions intelligently and how to make your emotions an asset rather than a liability. I have my own emotional intelligence consulting firm called HT Compassion. I'm also the creator of the play and pause methodology, which I'm actually going to be sharing with you later today. The play and pause methodology was picked up and featured by NBC5. That was exciting for me. And I'm also the co-author of two books, Career Breakthrough Playbook, as well as the Future Ready Performance Playbook. And we'll be talking about that as well. So let's get started. I'm also going to tell you a fun fact about myself, in the spirit of being fully human and kind of, creating some, sense of belonging and, not just being someone who's just giving a talk. I am not afraid of lizards, but I am super afraid of cats and dogs. So, fun fact there. I know you don't see that coming, right? So there's that for you. And I'm also going to tell you another fun fact about myself. I'm also a very lazy speaker. And what does that mean? That means that I don't want to be doing all the talking. I want to get you guys to be engaged, to be not just listening, but hopefully, and even though we're in a virtual format, but really engaging, participating, and leaving you with things that you can actually take away today. And that's really my hope, that you leave this session today with concrete, things that you can start applying, mindsets that you can start, kind of thinking differently about, and having something that you can actually practically take away. So, wherever you're sitting, can you grab the closest object on your desk? Or wherever you are, kitchen counter, table, wherever, just whatever closest object to you is. And as you do that, can you just spend some time observing, feeling, looking at that object? And if this object were to represent how it is that you're feeling today, what your mindset is like today, in the chat, tell me what it would be. And you can be creative. There's no right or wrong. This is just fun engagement. So if you want to pull up the chat here and see what we got. Happy and content. I like that. Mushy, caffeinated, happy, hopeful. Nice. Anything else? Come on. Pliable. Okay. I grabbed a mouse, ready to work and accomplish things. Okay. Some more. Nostalgic. Okay. Neutral. Hopeful. I see a lot of stuff about hope. That makes me happy. Budget numbers, evaluating numbers in my sleep. So a calculator, togetherness, bareback, body aspirin. Okay. I feel energetic. Awesome. Okay. Good. That was some, thanks for playing along. Organized. Okay. So all of you grabbed something within your vicinity, you observed it, you looked at it, and you kind of gave me something that it represents in terms of how it is that you are showing up today, right? In terms of your energy, in terms of your mindset. Awesome. So thanks for playing along. Now, let's move to the great AI myth. So I know that artificial intelligence is here. It's not going anywhere. And no one quite prepared us for this, unless you watched a show like Person of Interest a while ago, that kind of, told us about something like this happening, or, novels, or, kind of just how technology would advance. But till something is really here, we quite don't know what to expect of it, right? What does it really mean? What does it really do for us? And so, as artificial intelligence, whether we like it, whether we expected it, has taken more and more space in our lives, it has created more avenues. With anything new comes understandably some excitement, but also some uncertainty, some worry, some confusion. And artificial intelligence is a big one because it is fundamentally changing everything in which we maybe identified ourselves with, right? So today we're going to be very honest and acknowledging that, talking about that, and making sure that we kind of look at this and take a nuanced understanding of what this is. So, what's the one thing that you think artificial intelligence will never experience? So, I know there's a lot of stuff that AI can do for us, right? And it's just amazing to see all that. But What is one thing that you think AI cannot do, that AI will never be able to replace? Let's see what we got. Joy. I love that. Being tired and worn out. Yes, I think it really needs to learn how to do that because it's just on all the time. True love and empathy. Feeling human touch. Yep. Humanity. Emotions. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Tell me more. Things that AI shall never experience. It will never be sorry. You're right. I never actually thought about that. You're right. AI cannot feel sorry. Human nuance. Yep. What else? What else? Hunger. You're right. It cannot experience hunger. Anger as well, now that I think about it, right? Human emotions, as someone said. Okay. No spirit. Mm-hmm. No spirit. Stress, it cannot be stressed. World peace, you're right. It cannot experience world peace. How tragic. Ambition, it can only be as accurate as the data that it has been fed. So it has limitations. Yep. 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 Awesome. Well, you guys are a very engaged group, and I love that because, as I said, I'm a lazy speaker, so I don't want to be doing all the work. I want this back and forth. I want to walk away with insights from myself and say, hey, those are things that the audience said to me. So thanks for sharing that. So going back to why did I kind of bring that up? It's very easy when something seems to be picking up as much momentum and as much gusto that you kind of start feeling like, okay, well, then all these things AI can do. So we almost start doubting or feeling like it can do everything better than I can. It can do everything faster than I can. And there is no doubt about that. It can be more organized, it can get into more depth, it can, I mean, those are all valid things. It's very important as we all embrace and create space for AI in our lives to remember the things that AI cannot do, cannot experience. And I'm going to tell you why those things are important because those are the very things that we need to make our competitive advantage. Okay? So, what then? Why do we, when we think about emotions, right? What are the most common thing that we typically think about when emotions are brought up is that they're fluff, is that they make us weak. They're not for serious people. If you want to rise or you want to, become someone, then you can't be all mushy. And so what does that make us do? Ignore them, right? We put them to the side because emotions is what we save maybe for home. But when we show up in front of the world, whether it's at work, whether it's in any, other space, we've got to act like, you know what? I'm evolved to the point that my emotions are beneath me and I don't have emotions. And that is one of the greatest tragedies. That is one of the biggest causes of why we are often feeling as lost, as purposeless, as overwhelmed, as lonely as we are. Because emotions serve a very important purpose, right? Scientifically, I'm not just speaking wellness wise or I'm talking from a very evolutionary perspective. From the moment you're born till the moment you die, you are going to have emotions. That's the one thing, regardless of color, caste, creed, no matter where in the world we are, that is one common thing we all have. And if it is something that we all have, and there's so much commonality between different emotions, it only makes sense that we learn to embrace emotions. We learn how to work with them so that they work for us as opposed to against us. Some of the biggest myths we have when we say that someone is emotional, what does that indicate? If I say, hey, I'm an emotional person, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Sorry, my screen's not behaving. Um, Share that with me in the chat. If I tell you that someone is very emotional, what does that mean? Unstable. What else? Irrational. Victorian era treatment of women. Dramatic, not reliable, not fun to be around. So if Jalissa introduced me right now and said, hey, our speaker today is known for being very emotional, it would suddenly change maybe how you perceived or wanted to move forward in this, right? You'd be like, okay, do I really want to listen or get any insights from someone who's very emotional? Lots of drama, hysterical, overreacting, not intellectual. I like that, Heather. Not intellectual. Mm-hmm. Okay. So thanks for, again, engaging there. Um, why is it that emotions have this bad rep, so to say, right? So I had a very interesting observation, and I don't want to make this, gender nuance, but just to kind of put it out there, I made this observation, during the whole football, the World Cup thing that we had last month, and I said, if you and I've got two boys, 14 and 8, and they're soccer crazy, so we were watching a lot of soccer, and I have made this observation as I was seeing the people around me watching the game, and I said, if you were to watch people watching sports, never would you say that men are not emotional. I mean, the breadth and width of emotions that I observed during the World Cup, I was like, wow, from, you know, stress to worry to joy to frustration to anger to, euphoria. I mean, you were seeing the full spectrum of emotions as people were watching the World Cup. And I'm just using that as an example. The idea, and that's what I want to, where I like to go with this is we associate being emotional with being all the things that you guys just said, right? Being irrational, being erratic, and somewhere emotional means you're crying or you're sad. So out of the whole multitude and plethora of emotions out there, we somewhere believe that when someone is emotional, they're weepy, they're sad, they're depressed, or they're kind of all over the place. They're like a hot mess. But just when someone's super mad or triggered or frustrated, they're also being emotional because they're expressing an emotion fundamentally. So we have somehow got this really warped idea, and I call it the sad divorce that happened, that we separated and divorced emotions from intelligence. We believed that intelligence cannot be emotional and emotions cannot be intelligent. And that is where we got it wrong big time. Because our emotions are created, right? They have an intelligence. And for any intelligence to be truly intelligent, it has to be emotional. They go together, right? And let's get into that a little bit more. But I wanted to debunk this myth, first of all, that emotions are reserved for any one gender, or that emotions are fluff, or that they're weak. They're actually a very evolutionary, um, they're necessary for us to be able for expression, right? We feed a baby when they're hungry and they're crying. When someone smiles at us, we feel like, okay, this is someone who's indicating that they're safe or they're interested in maybe some form of communication. When suddenly, someone jumps up from behind the door, I'm going to be startled. Each of those, and I don't want to turn this into a lesson in biology, but each of those emotions serves a purpose. It creates different physiological reactions within your body. So if you're in a fight or flight situation where you're feeling scared or you're feeling worried, your body is physiologically, things are happening, right? All your blood is moving towards your limbs in case you need to fight or flight. Your digestive system is not, we're moving resources away from that because that's not the time we need to be eating. We need to be kind of on the go. So many such processes happen every time you feel an emotion, right? When you feel sad, different things happen. When you feel frustrated, different things happen, and different parts of the brain get engaged. Okay? So the thing about emotions is that they're very powerful because they're kind of our guide if we actually tap into them. If we actually tap into the intelligence of what they are and we move beyond the fact that we think, oh gosh, I don't have time for this. So in my one of the ideas that I propose in my most recent book, which is the Future Ready Performance Playbook, is I blasphemously, as some people that have reviewed the book say, I say, what if we viewed emotions as a currency? Okay. What do we do with currency? We try to save it, right? If we thought that our emotions had a dollar value, we would want to conserve them. We would want to think of ways to generate more of them. We would want to save them. We would want to be building our emotional wealth. Okay. So if I had to give you $10 every time I got triggered, or if I had to give you $20 every time I lost my cool, imagine you would be getting rich off of me, and I would think twice before I did those things. Similarly, if I was to receive money every time I was able to experience joy, clarity, harmony, peace, imagine how that whole thing kind of changes the way we view emotions. The reason I go with this example, and I talk about this in the book, is because money is a very established form. We've all grown up with understanding that money has a value. It's an energy of exchange. It indicates a value for something that we've come up with. And emotions, if we kind of draw that same parallel, if we viewed emotions like that, it would change the way we managed, we generated, we spent our emotions. So let's take that a little further. And this is the formula that I talk about in my book, and there's an assessment that you can take. Your net emotional worth, okay, is your emotional assets minus emotional leakage. Now look over at this chart, and this is also in the book. I've put it out here for you. I find this chart very fascinating, and someone introduced me to it. They kind of put out emotions and they talk about the energetic log, right? Now, I want you to think about this as Celsius and Fahrenheit. I don't want you to, we need some established value, so we're kind of going by this. Um, but if you notice, looking towards the bottom, emotions such as shame, guilt, apathy, grief, their energetic log is 20, 30, 50, 75, kind of low, right? And look at the predominant emotional state that follows with them: humiliation, blame, despair, and then view of life, all of that, right? And then as you move up, you've got fear, desire, anger, and the energetic log, so oops, goes up a little bit. Moving further up into pride and courage, it's going up. We're moving into neutrality, willingness, acceptance. What do we see? We're getting into 250, 310, 350. Love and reason, even more. Joy and peace, even more. And then enlightenment. I want you to notice a really cool thing also, that these levels kind of follow also the colors of the rainbow. It fascinates me a little bit. But where I'm going with this, and again, as I said in the book, it goes into a lot more depth and you can take the assessment, and it's a 3-minute assessment. One of the things I've realized that when stuff about emotions comes up, it tends to be either so objective that it's hard because you have to do like a 200 question questionnaire. And by the end of it, I'm just clicking always because I'm like, I just want to get done with this. But what I've created here is a 3-minute assessment. It's got just a few questions, but where I'm going with that is chart, we get into net emotional worth, and you look at what emotions actually add to your asset value, meaning which ones give you clarity, allow for connection, make you feel positive. Those are the emotions those are our assets. And then we're human. We have leakages. We're going to get triggered. We're going to get mad. We're going to get, things are going to bother us. Those are your emotional leakages. We're not denying that, right? The premise of what I've built here is that all emotions are valid, but all emotions do not carry the same value. So let me say that again. All emotions are valid. You want to feel shame, you want to feel willingness, you want to feel joy, you want to feel peace. They're all welcome, they're all valid. An emotion is valid, right? I'm changing the perspective of getting into the, again, this is not for therapy and all of that, just from a for your success in the world, for your success in the workplace, for your success in other spaces, the net emotional worth idea is built on, are you emotionally wealthy or are you an emotional overdraft? And the idea is that the people that you remember, if you think of your life, and think of the people that had the most impact on you, who were maybe people that inspired you, motivated you, people that you aspired to be like. I can assure you that they were people that were very financially wealthy. They managed their emotions well. That didn't mean they didn't have any, they were very human, but they generated more high value emotion and tried to limit their leakages. So, what are high value emotions? Looking at this chart, high value emotions would be reason, love, acceptance, peace, willingness, neutrality. Those are all good emotions to have. Those are the ones we want to be doing activities that allow us to generate. And I'm going to be talking about how we can do that too. So, as I said, I want to leave you with clear things because I feel often when emotions are talked about, it's all very surface level. It makes sense, but then you walk out of there and you're like, what does that mean for my life? So, I'm going to be making this pretty concrete. But any thoughts, any, kind of share any comments you have. Does this make sense? If I was to ask you which emotion out of this, over here, which one would you say you have the most experience experiencing? Which one would it be? I like someone's earlier comment, Trevor said, can make pauses question your ability to perform job functions. True if you're too emotional. Fear. Okay. So I'm like 90% in survival. Okay. Willingness. And again, there is no right or wrong to emotions. Grief, acceptance. What else? What else? Which emotion do you have the most experience experiencing? So which ones most commonly come up for you? Desire, okay. Spiritual, okay. Joy, awesome. And I also want to, share this with you that doing the work that I do in emotions, and I'm not a mental health practitioner, I'm not a mental health professional, a psychiatrist, but my fascination, sometimes it depends on the day. Um, my fascination with emotions comes from a personal place as well. I Since I was a kid, I was a very sensitive kid. I was always observing people's moods and their nuances and their facial expressions and their micro expressions. And I kind of always felt like I wanted everyone to be in this, pink zone as a child. My goal was I want everyone to just be peace, joy, and enlightenment, right? We know that that's not realistic and that's not our job to do. But what that meant was that from a young age, at the age of 14, when other people were reading, girls were reading fashion magazines and romantic novels, I was reading books about emotions. I was just fascinated by them. And it was as I got older and older, I realized that that was often what I was called to do, meaning whether it was in the corporate world, whether it was when it came to jobs, within family, within friends, and kind of be the mediator, kind of be the one to kind of help people regulate and find a good space to have healthy conversations. And so I also understand that it takes a lot of honesty and vulnerability for you guys to be even just on a chat share these things, right? We often feel like I don't want to get into it. I don't know, like it doesn't matter. So I appreciate you being that because we can't talk about emotions without dabbling in our own and kind of seeing that yeah, they're not as prickly or they're not as weird as we think they are. So moving on, let's get into emotional intelligence, right? I want to give you some just basic foundation. So emotional intelligence is the ability to be attuned to your own emotions and the emotions of those around you, to create healthy, synergistic relationships. Okay, that's my simple definition. I'm a simple person. I don't like long, drawn out, super wordy stuff. I feel like, I want something that makes sense. So that's what emotional, and there's lots of different definitions, but the fundamental idea is that how attuned you are to your emotions and the emotions of those around you. And then what are we doing with that? We're trying to build healthy, synergistic relationships. Okay. So the foundation is self-awareness, starting right here. Self-awareness. What is self-awareness? Self-awareness is about having a healthy sense of self, an honest sense of who you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your motivations are, not believing that I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like the best thing since sliced bread, also not believing that, oh, I'm nothing. It's having an honest, healthy sense of self, an accurate self-assessment. Okay? That's self-awareness. It is the foundation on which everything else kind of gets built. Then we have self-management. So now that I'm self-aware, I know, for example, that I get stressed out easily, that I get frustrated by XYZ, that I don't handle pressure or deadlines well. That's self-awareness. What is self-management? Self-management is what are we doing about the things that we know about ourselves? What tools, what strategies are we using to make sure that we are allowing ourselves opportunities to be our best self? So, what self-management is not, right? And I love saying this, and it always gives everyone a big chuckle. Self, oops, self awareness without self management is basically a license to be obnoxious. Okay, what do I mean by that? In today's world, there's a lot of this pseudo self awareness, right? We're living in an age of social media, and everyone is just saying, I know I'm this, and I know. Well, if I tell you, hey, I know that I get really mad when self awareness. So, what are you doing about it?
Hiba, sorry,
Mm,
you froze for a sec. Can you just
okay.
yeah, just like 5 seconds
Okay, no
repeat?
problem.
Yeah.
I said, if I say that, oh, I get really mad when people are late, I get super annoyed when someone is late to a meeting, that's self-awareness. But the next question is, what are you doing about it? When we often, under the guise of sounding very self-aware, what we're not taking is we're not taking responsibility and accountability for what are we going to do about that thing that we know about ourselves? What are you doing about it? Because if I get super triggered when people are late to a meeting, it's not on everybody else to manage that. It's on me to figure out a way to handle that. And that's important, right? So self-management are the things that we're doing to keep ourselves in a state of balance. So we're not ending up in that deficit, emotional deficit. Um, in my work, within emotional intelligence, I like to focus a lot on self-regulation. That's what I love working with people on, because that is often the part that's missing. I hone in on that. What does self-regulation look like for you? Because it would look maybe different for me as it would for Heather or Jalissa or, somebody else. All of us are unique. So figuring out what that means for you is kind of the key part. Now, that self-awareness and self-management is the self part. Those are the things we do. We then move into the social aspect, which is social awareness. And that includes organizational awareness, understanding the environment, reading the room. When you walk into a place, being able to pick up on the unspoken nuances of the room, how people are feeling when you're having a conversation with somebody, noticing what's going on. Organizational awareness, right? This is where empathy and compassion come in, right? And we often think that empathy and compassion are synonymous. They're not. One of the things I talk about in my book is in the artificial intelligence era, empathy is great because even AI can duplicate and replicate empathy, and it does a pretty good job making us feel like, hey, Hiba, great question. Hey, Hiba, I'm glad you asked that. So we can feel validated, so to say. But Compassion is your human edge because that's something that AI cannot do yet. Why? Because compassion requires effort. It requires presence. It requires intention. And those are the things that make you unique. So that distinction is important. And I talk about how to move from that, from empathy to compassion, what that would entail. Then we come into the last component of emotional intelligence, which is social skills. These are things like being how much you can motivate others, inspire others, bring out the best in others, create good synergy. What I find really funny is I have so many people after my talks or workshops, they'll come up to me and say, yeah, hey, I love all this, but I just want to know how I can have influence, how I can have, that part, how I can get people to rally behind me. The truth and the only way this works is this is you it's not a buffet. You don't get to choose and I want to enjoy the benefits of social skills, but I don't want to work on being self-aware. You cannot have the cherry on top of the cake without working on the cake. So once you work on being self-aware, you work on self-regulation, you work on social awareness, the social skill piece kind of naturally is a beautiful byproduct, right? And so if you want that part, that reward of being an emotionally intelligent leader, person, parent, partner, whatever capacity you're in, it's not going to happen in isolation. It is, we kind of have to work on all those facets because that's the only way for it to be really true. So you're going, okay, that's great. Now tell us, how do we do this? So I've got a methodology that I put together to really make this easy because I'm all about making things fun. Life is too serious to keep everything so intense. So how do we develop our emotional intelligence? So when I started doing this work, I come from an early childhood background. My family and we own a preschool. And so you can imagine I'm used to being around little kids and developing and curriculum and stuff for them. So I would show up to a lot of these workshops with CEOs and executives with, guess what? Play-Doh. Yep, because I've sat through enough trainings myself in my corporate career to know that it was like, please, no, no, don't talk again. I don't want to sit through this. So I knew that I swore to myself, I'm never going to be the kind of speaker or trainer where people are like, just please be quiet, right? I was like, I want to get people to be really engaged. And engagement means we got to be using all of our senses. So that's where the Play-Doh became my signature tool. And we're obviously doing this virtually, so obviously can't do that as much. But in person, we've got colorful tubs that I put out on the tables. I use Play-Doh as my medium to build on a lot of the ideas that I'm talking about. So that's where play came in. I noticed something that I knew just even from early childhood, but I saw its power even more so in a way with adults, that when people are given um, silly, light, innocent tools and told to just kind of build or create or get creative with them, the energy of the room would start changing. Absolute strangers started talking, smiling. Literally, I could tell their nervous system was we were dropping the guards, right? We're being funny together, we're laughing, we're being silly. That is the play part of the methodology in which I say that adults need to be playing a lot more. We are living in an age of excessive digital overload, and there's not enough things that we're doing that are allowing us to remain true to our creative, curious, playful selves. And that's where play allows us to do that. Okay? And we'll practice that in just a second. Then there's pause. Pauses. So if play is allowing us to generate our emotional assets, work on generating more high value emotion, pause allows us to limit emotional leakages. What is a pause? We're going to get into that as well. Okay? Let's go. So, what did I say? We're going to keep busy and engaged. If you have a piece of paper and pen, I want you to grab that, please. If you have to walk over and get it, I would like you to get it because I want you to doodle. We're going to doodle. Okay? And what is doodling? Doodling is mindless movement of your hands using a pen, a marker, a pencil, whatever, on paper, follows no pattern, no destination, no metric, no evaluation. Let's just do. I'll give you a minute to doodle. Okay. And then, oh, I missed some of these up here comments. Okay, I should thank you for sharing that. Survival and reason. And Trevor made a right observation. If someone is looking strictly for influence and they don't check the other three boxes on emotional intelligence, true. Can you drop in the chat for me how it felt to just doodle? Or if you also want to share with me what it is that you doodled. Like, was there anything specific that came out of it? If so, if you can tell me what it is and just how it made you feel as you were doodling. Relaxed. I doodled the word doodle. That is a good word to doodle, right? Because it's got a lot of stuff happening in there. Tell me more. What did you feel as you doodled? I doodled a cloud with rain, a flower, and a 5-point star. Nice. Relaxed allows for one to breathe. You're right, Trevor. And engaged at the same time. I suppose that's where adult coloring books cannot think of. Oh, you guys are fast typers. Can come into play. Yes, I think it's Crescent, if I'm saying that right. Not much of a doodler, but I wrote down some ideas that popped in my head on my sticky note. Okay, relaxed. I doodled connecting circles. Okay, Cassie. My brain feels more creative. Aha, 1 minute of doodling. Brain feels more creative. I like that. And a sense of calmness and creativity, uplifting, okay, and relaxing. Thanks, Aisha. Never doodled, ever felt relaxed, but did circles. Okay, we'll take that. So thanks for sharing that, guys. Coming back to what you just did, right? When I had you doodle, was you just played. You just played. And one of the challenges of the world we live in today is that we have cognitive overload tripling, by the way. There's some amazing, there's a chapter by one of my co-authors, Jessica Javins, that talks about just all of the shape of burnout today is very different than what it looked like maybe 20 years ago. The burnout today is not visible. We continue performing, we continue showing up, we continue excelling and doing well, but the burnout has become more and more invisible because we're kind of shoving it kind of down. Because, hey, we're too accomplished and too smart to be burnt out. And that's sad because now there's no visible sign. We're not looking fatigued. We're still going through all the motions. But what is the problem? And I call this state high functioning freeze. We're going through all the motions. And I've had so many clients say this to me. Yeah, Hiba, it's great. I mean, I go to work, I'm in this really good position, I come back home, I do whatever. I'm going through the motions. When someone says that to me, I get I really like start listening even more intently. Why? Because we were not meant to just go through the motions in life. We were meant to go through the emotions. I'm going to take a moment for that to sit because I want you to think about that. Just going through the motions is a sign that you are either in survival mode or you're in a high functioning freeze, right? High functioning freeze is a harder state to kind of work out of because technically, excuse me, everything looks great. But on the inside, there's no aliveness. There is just this like almost like there's no soul. You're just going through everything methodically. The kids are fed, everyone's happy, meet the friends, I go shopping. Like you're just going through the motions. And that is not how we were meant to live. It's honestly a waste of our human selves and our human potential to be doing that. So what does that have to do with doodling? Well, when I talked about play earlier, Play allows us to replenish our emotional reserves because it allows us to do things that don't have an agenda. We live in a world where since the time we wake up, there is an agenda. There's things we need to do. There's places we need to get. There's goals and there's metrics. And then you open LinkedIn or social media and it looks like everyone is doing something great. And now you're going, oh gosh, am I the only one that's feeling this? You're not. I promise you, you're not. Everyone is feeling the same thing, but we, as much as we've become digitally connected, we've also become digitally isolated because I'm looking at Jalissa thinking, oh my God, look at Jalissa doing all this cool stuff. And, but I don't even know, I can't even find a job or, I've got these challenges. And we're only thinking of what we don't have and we're focusing on what we perceive the other people around us to have. Play is very important. It is the antidote to all of these things, to the lack of aliveness, to the kind of loneliness, to lack of creativity, to getting sucked in by the digital age. Play allows us to keep our creativity and our curiosity alive. The reason I had you doodle is because we often think of play, and the first thing I hear people tell me is, oh, yeah, I play pickleball. Oh, yeah, I play this sport, or I play with my kid. Awesome. But when I talk about play, the play that I prescribe is play with certain kind of ideas, right? And what I mean by that is play that is low threat, play that allows open-ended expression and exploration. It's curiosity driven. It is not meant for any metric. It is not meant to be shared. What you just doodled, you most likely are not going to put up on your LinkedIn or your Instagram, right? That's the beauty of play. It's something that is done intrinsically for you. Play has to have that quality for it to hold on to its essence. It's not a competition. My play doesn't have to look better than somebody else's, but my play needs to be something that works for me. And I'm going to be giving you examples in a little bit of different things that would qualify as play or that are good ways to start playing. Okay, let's keep going. The critical need for more play, right? So I'm not just telling you to play because, oh, it's fun and it's as important as sleep. Take a moment to soak that in, guys. Did you ever think play would be as important as sleep? It rewires your brain. You guys just did a 1 minute activity with me and you noticed, and so many of you said it felt relaxing, it felt creative, it felt why? Because just in doing that, you are allowing a different part of the brain to be engaged, which is the prefrontal cortex. In my workshops, I talk about this and I pull out well, not a real brain, but I pull out a sample, a model brain, and I show you the upstairs and the downstairs brain and which parts house what. But play allows us to make the prefrontal cortex to engage it. It allows there to be more blood flow to it. That is essential for your cognitive flexibility. It's essential for decision making. It makes you more creative. Play makes you smarter. We didn't think so, right? Because play is something kids do. I'm like the senior person and I'm an important person. I don't have time for this. That's the attitude we have towards play. This is frivolous. That's exactly what I want to debunk. It is not. It is exactly what you need in the artificial intelligence era for you to remain and have a competitive advantage. You need more play. Lowers cortisol. Who would have thought that? Someone said something about it de-stressing them. So play bundles lots of different things. Movement, laughter, connection. Each obviously has the power and ability to lower our stress hormones. We start feeling greater psychological safety when we can play around somebody. I'm a very playful person, but I've noticed it's around certain people, certain spaces that I'm able to get into my playful zone. Boosts EQ. So when we are playing, people that are playful actually have higher emotional intelligence, better empathy, and they have better social interaction skills. So that is why play is so important. All the things that we're hoping to accomplish in life, creativity and motivation and drive and purpose and peak performance and all this fun jazz, Play allows us to create the right environment and the right brain state for that to happen. Okay? Now, let's talk about this part, reaction versus response. Now, I see a lot of people use these two words very interchangeably, right? And they're not. They're very different, and it's very important. If there's one thing I want you to take away today is to know the difference between am I reacting or am I responding? A reaction is impulsive, right? If I touch a hot, something super hot, my immediate reaction is going to be, I'm going to try letting go of it. That's a reaction, right? If my finger gets stuck somewhere, my reaction is going to be to remove it. Those are reactions. They're very primal, they're very instinctive. They come from our reptilian part of the brain, the part of the brain that's supposed to keep us alive. Okay? They're meant to ensure survival, which means that there's very little thinking involved in a reaction. We're just doing it. It's very impulsive. A response is intentional, it's measured, it's driven by awareness, right? The only thing that separates a reaction from a response is, drum roll, a pause. Okay, remember we talked about the play, and then I told you there was another part, the pause. So this is the part that separates a reaction from a response. The more space that you can create between a stimulus and your response, the richer your life is going to get. It's going to get richer, not just monetarily, but emotionally, relationally, from a health perspective, because people that are reactive, as we said, going back to what we talked about earlier, what do we typically associate when someone is also very emotional? That they're reactive. Okay? That's also why the word emotional has got a bad reputation. The pause is to stop for a moment on purpose. What does that mean? I'm not stopping. When I pause, if I'm in a conversation with somebody and it's getting heated and I'm starting to feel like self-awareness is me noticing that my breathing is getting shallow, my limbs are getting tensed, my jaw is tensing up. All of that is self-awareness, right? My self-management piece means, what am I doing about this? Because I'm most likely getting into a reactive state, which means that I'm just now trying to either win, I'm not really thinking very rationally, I'm not engaging with my prefrontal cortex. And that is where we say things we shouldn't say. We get into situations that we can easily avoid. But when I pause, I'm not saying that I'm not talking to you, but I'm taking a little bit of a break. I'm breaking the momentum just a little bit. I'm creating some space because in that space, in that pause, I'm able to maybe move up. Remember our map of consciousness? I'm able to move a few notches up. And I'm able to move from low value emotion into possibly slightly higher value emotion. The pause allows us to do that. A pause is your superpower. We all have the opportunity and option and privilege of a pause. We choose not to use it. Part of it, I think, is because we think like AI never stops, right? So, like, you're not AI. Pause. That's your human advantage. Pause. Someone is saying something that you're not sure of before you disagree, before you snap back, before you tell them they're wrong, before you immediately blurt out your, opinion. Power move.
Sorry, we had another little glitch. If you could
Sure.
repeat for a second.
Okay. I said the pause is also a very awesome power move. Why? I'm going to show you. When something is said with purpose, with a certain nuance, with a certain speed, and when I pause between responding, I emanate a certain amount of confidence, a certain amount of authority, a certain amount of clarity. If you notice, I spoke those words very slowly, right? Since I was little, always had this thing where I was always in school called out for speaking too fast. Because I would like, it was like the teachers would be like, "What did you just say?" And I learned that I had to slow down because when I slowed down, I was able to communicate more clarity, also more authority and more confidence. So a pause is a strategically smart thing to do as you're thinking, as you're processing. Take that pause and try to think of, okay, do I want to react or do I want to respond? That's important. Um, I'm just going to open up the chat because I see that there might be some things that I missed. Okay, there are people telling me about what they doodled, the two tulips, a person. Okay. Okay. Exactly. Social media has that challenge is you're supposed to just keep going. You're supposed to be on all the time. And no, we were not. We were meant to just do things. We were just meant to play. We were meant to pause, and we don't need to advertise that and amplify that to the world. So let's do this. Okay. This is a very fun and important activity. I want you to think of a recent time that you were maybe triggered or frustrated. Okay, nothing dramatic. Maybe something stuck in traffic, maybe someone at the grocery store, maybe someone, your kid, your partner, your friend, whatever. A time that you were recently triggered or frustrated. I want you to, with whatever you have lying around in a virtual, and normally I would give you Play-Doh and we would have a lot of fun doing this in person. But if you have a piece of paper, if you have whatever close to you without causing harm to yourself or those around you, I want you to squish, tear, scribble, smash, do whatever you feel like with that item. So if you're doodling, because I guess you all have that paper and pen handy, I want you to think of that time, think of that, go back to that memory, and I want you to do whatever you feel like. If you're scribbling, scribble away. If you're tearing, tear away. And I'm going to tell you when to stop. Okay? So start and keep going. And I'm going to tell you when to stop. So what are we doing? We're thinking of a time that we were recently frustrated or triggered, and we're reliving what that state was, and we're doing whatever we feel like, but we're doing something. I want you to either squish, tear, smash, scribble, roll, something. I want there to be physical movement. And I want you to keep doing that till I tell you to stop. So keep at it till you hear from me again. Keep going. Don't stop. There's a method to this madness, I promise. Okay. And let's stop now. Okay? I want you to pause. Take that deep breath. Take that deep breath with me. I want you to tell me how you felt at the beginning in one word when you started doing whatever it is that you were doing. And if you can actually share with me what it is that you were doing if you'd like, and how you felt at the end when I told you to stop. Share with me. Free writing, stressed and then decompressed. Okay. So when you started, you were stressed because you were most likely remembering what it is that triggered you, what made you upset. And then by the end, when I told you to stop, you felt decompressed, apprehensive, then relief. Okay. Understandable. Tell me more. Tell me more. when I was irritated at first when I started tearing paper, but by the end I was like, when can I stop? I was over the feeling, okay? I actually thought of a major frustration, not mild. Oops, I'm sorry if you did, because that can take us to a different space. Anxious, stressed, agitated, then calm and de-escalated. Okay, Aisha, nice. Heart rate accelerated and then relaxed. Awesome, Heather. Drew my router that isn't working, then leaves around it. I felt vindicated. Okay. Relief. Okay. I crumpled a sheet of paper until I could no longer do so. Tense, then relief. Okay. And then I'm going to tell you about what we just did there. I was tearing the piece of paper that I had doodled on, had to stop sooner than when you said to piece of paper being small, and I was at confetti level. I did feel calmer. I'm glad, Cindy. And hey, I think it's cool that it started. It turned into confetti by the end. I think there's some symbolic stuff there. Okay, so thanks for sharing. I'm gonna now get into what we did. And actually, before I even get into that, I want you to now that we've all paused and you had a chance to notice what you did, I want you to remake something of your choice, something that you like. So whether you're doodling or drawing, whatever, I just want you to reshape whatever it is that you were working, whatever material you were using, and I want you to make something that is positive, something like anything. Could be ice cream, could be a slushie, could be a pillow, could be Netflix. So let me now get your attention and walk you through what we just did there. Okay? I wanted you to experience a pause and teach you and show you what a effective pause is. There is so much talk today about pause here and pause this and pause that. And my biggest question to people is, okay, but who's telling us what are we supposed to do during this pause? Because we know we say, oh, well, deep breathe. Okay, I can tell you when I'm worked up, I mean, I'm not remembering to deep breathe. I'm fully in a different headspace. So, what is the purpose of this? When you think of a recent frustration and you kind of go over it in your head, the opportunity to kind of get back in that space and you scribbled, you doodled, you tore, whatever you did. Normally with Play-Doh, people are really, at it, and it's so fun to see their expressions and all of that. You did that for 90 seconds. Why did I give you 90 seconds to do that? There's a physiological reason. When you are upset, when you are triggered, when you're whatever, state you're in, that's, not necessarily extremely positive, your body is being flooded with neurochemicals. You're riled up. That is physiologically what your body is kind of meant to do. You're pumped up and your system is flooded with all of these neurochemicals. So you're feeling like you're breathing, you're tensed up, there is physiologically a lot of stuff happening inside your body. It takes 90 seconds for those emotions to make their way and do their cycle. At 90 seconds, right? They've done what they need to do. That is the time now that you regain control of the driver's seat and you get to decide whether you want to continue engaging with this emotion or if you want to change that narrative and do something else. The reason it is never effective to try jumping into a response or a conversation or any of that during those first 90 seconds when you're triggered is that the body is still dealing with that flood of emotion, so to say, but that flood of neurochemicals. You're not physically in the best space to be engaging your prefrontal cortex. But when you give yourself 90 seconds, right? And it's 90 seconds, there's a magic number. You have allowed that emotion to do its work. So as you all said, you felt relaxed, you felt calmer. And at some point when you're like, ugh, you started going, okay, this is really not that big a deal, right? Exactly. But that only happens when we've had those 90 seconds. And then I had you make something that you wanted because I wanted you to see that you regain control to change this into something that works for you. So that is what you kind of need to remind yourself. And it becomes language that I've introduced in organizations where they'll say, hey, I need 90 seconds. Or, hey, I'm gonna get back to it. I think I need my 90 seconds right now. It's a great way to show that I need some time to decompress. You're not being disrespectful. You're not just getting up and walking off. You're not being aggressive. I'm going to take 90 seconds. It's self-regulation. It's telling yourself, I need to self-regulate in this. So that was that. We just talked, we went through what a healthy pause is, why it needs to be 90 seconds, and what happens in those 90 seconds. Moving along. Play and pause. So now I'm going to put it together. I had you play with the doodle and I had you pause with this activity. So we did both. I gave you a trailer of both. But here I put them side by side and show you the difference between play and pause. Play is all about exploring without pressure. It's about curiosity. It's about experimenting. It's about trying. When you're doodling, you're just having fun. There's no agenda. It's energizing because you're seeing what's possible, right? It's a fun state to be in. It's a playful state to be in. The pause, as we just talked about, allows you to be grounded, allows you to regain clarity. It allows you to observe. It allows us to make sure we limit our emotional leakages, that we're not wasting our emotional asset without thought. That's the play and pause mix over there. So, how to add moments of play and pause. As I promised you, I want to give you very concrete things, guys. I don't want you to walk away going, okay, that sounded great. What do I do with it? These are simple ways that you can add moments of play and pause. Walk, 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 walk. I do walking workshops over here with people because there is so much power when we walk. It changes up the momentum. Doodle, we just did that. Sing, hum, dance. Dance in the shower, dance in the kitchen, move that body. When you're when you're sitting in the car, just even, tap the steering wheel. These are simple ways to bring play. Very simple. No money needed, no amount of time needed to put aside. Simple ways. 1 minute wonder. In my book, I talk about different forms of play, and cognitive play is what you can do without even getting up. Literally in conversation, storytelling. 1 minute wonder. Hey, if you were like 10 feet tall, what do you think, what would you want to look into? Just crazy questions. Laughing on purpose. We don't laugh enough, guys. Again, there's a lot of digital overload. There's a lot of overwhelming factors, and we're not doing anything to offset it. That's what the purpose of my play and pause is, helping you do things that generate those high value emotions. Slow sipping. Very simple. We're all drinking water, coffee, but it's often like, slow down. Slow down. Take that slower sip. Soften your shoulders. This is exactly where we often hold it. We're all like this. But when you open up, you're also opening yourself up to more possibilities, more openness, more, great things to happen. So open up those shoulders, soften those shoulders. Similarly, soften this jawline. Very important. I was just in Italy, and I did this nervous system leadership course, and it was fascinating to me where they talk about we carry a lot of stuff right here in this jaw, right? Like this. See, that's tight, but then you loosen it up and you feel better, right? So play gives you options, pause gives you clarity. Why do I do all of this? Why am I so passionate about play and pause? And why am I talking about this for the last hour? Because where am I going with this? All this emotional regulation, the destination is zest. Zest we have lost, right?
Sorry, could you repeat someone? Yeah, we heard destination and then you cut
Okay,
out a little bit. Yeah.
sorry about that. So zest is basically great energy, interest, having a lot of enthusiasm for something. Where am I going with all of this play and pauses? I want to move people, and that's just the methodology. The vehicle is to help people be in a state of zest. Why? Because zest is really, it's your purpose on fire. It's your purpose with a pulse. We hear purpose this and purpose that, and I'm like, yeah, purpose alone doesn't mean anything unless we've added some emotions to it. So this that I'm showing you right here has a fun story. When I learned how to write, and I think I must have been like 5 years old or 6 years old, I had no clue what this word meant, but I would doodle the word zest exactly like this everywhere. And it wasn't until years later that I was like, this word zest, someone brought it up and said, hey, Hiba, you have a lot of zest. And I was like, wait a minute, that word means so much. Why is that? And I remembered that I was doodling this word. So in a way, I was like, I was doodling my purpose. And it comes back full circle. Here I am talking to a whole bunch of smart people like you guys about how to add zest. And zest is really where you are your most human self. So before I get into the last part, I want to take a pause and I want to get any takeaways. What are you taking away today? Any comments, any questions? And then I'm going to have one more activity that we're going to do together. Let's see what we got. You can add about 100 more walks to that. You also breathe better. Yes, you're right, Trevor. Any comments, any takeaways, any things that have stuck out to you, anything you want, oops, more clarification on? Now is the time. Any commitments that we're going to make of how we're going to be adding some play and pause to our lives? No, you're not taking anything back? Well, that makes me sad. I think I need to pause more when I get frustrated. Thanks, Julissa. I love walking meetings. I want to do more. Yes, walking meetings. I have to remember the joy I felt. Walks. At least I have data to suggest I can play more. Exactly. You have scientific proof. The power of the pause. That's what you're taking away, Crescents. I love that. Doing this. Awesome. Just get up and move. It's that simple, Cassie. Just get up and move. Really. You know, it's just going back to basics in a way. Okay. And let's move on. So we've talked a lot about the play and pause. We've talked about the artificial intelligence era. I want to get into this idea because this whole book is built on it. And it's such a great because it's a co-authored piece that I've written. So we've got six other global thinkers talking and sharing their expertise, people that come from the very technical world, people that come from leadership, people that come from the AI aspect. So it's just got a lot of different nuanced perspectives. And the focus is how to stay unapologetically human in the artificial intelligence era. Okay, so that's a book that we just launched last Saturday. And the one that we wrote prior to this was called the Career Breakthrough Playbook, which also goes into basics. It's won its fifth awards. I was excited about that. This book I'm super excited about because I think it's so relevant. And the question is, who does the future belong to? It doesn't belong to people that can work the fastest, because guess what? AI can work faster than you can. Not the most technical, because AI can beat you at that. This book gets into this, but the future belongs to those who are the most emotionally regulated, to those that have the most zest. There's a brilliant portion in this book written by Eric Ebron. The future belongs to the neurodivergent. Did we ever think that would happen? And it really gets into how, so far in history, we've lived with understanding the world from a very neurotypical point of view, with the very, this is how it is. We work this way, we retain this way, etc. But the AI era means that people who we normally try to think were just nerdy, the Sheldons of the world from the Big Bang Theory, actually have so much more value because they dare to think outside the box, are not restricted by traditional models. So the future belongs to the emotionally regulated. It belongs to those who know who become aware of the current kind of burnout. The future belongs to those who know how to play, who know when to play, who know when to pause. And each of those skills has the potential to be your competitive edge. And you don't need any extensive, expensive training or any of that. You need that awareness. You need that commitment. There's a great section by an author who's based in Switzerland, who's part of the Swiss Business School, who talks about how to be lifelong learners, how to use AI to your advantage and not feel like you're competing with it. So I've dropped the QR code for where you can order the book. The Kindle version is available as well as the physical book, but it has a lot of really cool assessments. So it's actually a great workbook format. You're not just listening to philosophy or theory, but it's like, let's do this. Let's actually get into this. And that's really where I want you to think that who does the future belong to? What traits or qualities? And how am I trying to bring them into my life? I'm going to do this one last activity before we wrap up today. I want you on a piece of paper, or if you want to type it out for me, do that. Um, Give me an I am statement. So I am, if I asked you, hey, Jalissa, who are you? I am what? Oops. So give me an I am statement. No right or wrongs, just I am. Play hard, work hard. This is caring, great. That is right. I'm glad I shall. Power of play, we'll use it. Okay, I'm just catching up on these comments. Being self-aware is so important. Play and pause. I am creative. I am capable. I'm fearless. Can I get this transcript? Want to? Yes, I think Jalissa can help you with that. I am willing and open. Okay, what else do we have? Fearful and fearless. I am evergreen. Okay, so you guys are a super smart bunch, all of you guys up there in Illinois, because I'm a student and I'm a teacher. I like that, Crescents. I am determined. So you guys took the zest out of it for me because when I do this normally, I am they're giving me something I am they're telling me their profession, they're telling me their interests, right? And that's great. Obviously, that's part of who you are. What I tell them is tell me who you are without any of your titles, without your education, without your any of the worldly nuances. So you guys have understood the assignment and given me just that. You have shared each of the things that you guys just said. That is your competitive advantage. That is your human advantage in the artificial intelligence era. That is what I need you to hold on to. And I want you to think of ways to develop that. Okay, so that is really what it is. I am, that is what I want you to keep working on. And with that, here we are. I would love to connect with you guys if you have more questions, if you have, anything food for thought. I would love to connect with you on LinkedIn. You can follow me on Instagram. That other QR code is for that. That's where I'm often sharing little easy snippets of easy hacks, as I like to call them, things that you can just scroll through and be like, hey, that's something we can do. I also have a program called the Zest Lab, which is a 1-year immersive program in which I take organizations through how it is that we can really make Zest a part of our culture. And so it's not just fluff, it's very walking, talking, feeling, eating. It's really how do we make Zest part of our operating system? And then I also do virtually as well, one-on-one play and pause sessions, which is fun because we kind of really get into what play and pause would be specific to you. And then obviously book signing. So I think I shared the QR code for the book earlier. Would love for you to check that out. It's packed with some solid information. And yeah, I want to debunk the myth that, emotions are fluff, that we don't need. My big thing is, your best is not enough in the AI era. We need your zest. Your zest is what you need, and that's what we need to cultivate. And again, just because you're high functioning doesn't mean you're well, right? We need to really make sure we're operating from the right place there. Oops. And with that, I am done. I have very much enjoyed the session. Oh, whoa, there's some comments there. Okay. Another reason to not ignore your emotions and feeling of the AI era is the preservation of a survival instinct called the uncanny valley. It allows us to identify when something is real enough to appear true to life. Unapologetically, we have a duty future generation to maintain our humanity. Very, very well said, Trevor. Very, very well said. I think that's a great way to wrap it up. We owe it to ourselves. We owe it to the people we love. We owe it to the future generations to be a great model of the power of emotions and to be these fully emotional beings that are not crazy, erratic, irrational, but actually have the ability to feel a full multitude of emotions. That is what separates us from the desk. We're able to be all of that. So thank you guys for being as engaged as you were. And just playing along. A virtual format is I'm a much more in-person kind of person, but I love that you guys engaged and played, and I really hope you took some of these takeaways. I'd love to connect with you. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and Insta. And over to you, Jalissa.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this presentation. This was wonderful. Um, well, that concludes our presentation for today. Thank you guys for attending today's webinar. A survey along with the link for the presentation materials and recording will be located in tomorrow's follow-up email as well. And I know that there were some questions about getting the transcript. So if you need the transcript, please just email us when you get your follow email if you haven't already given us our email. So thank you guys so much, and enjoy the rest of your work day.
Thank you guys. I enjoyed this. Thanks for tuning in. Bye.
Okay, bye.